What's up, everyone? We're back. We are back. I've put the band back together. Myself, Chris, Cash and Dave have got back together for a bit of an end of season reunion, a little look ahead to the transfer window, and of course we'll look ahead to next season as well. Let me just say hello to everybody individually. Dave, how are you, mate? How are you keeping?
Good, buddy. Good, thank you. Hope you're well.
I'm brilliant, mate, but I tell you what, I was following your trip over to Madrid, and jealousy isn't enough of a word to use what I was seeing the videos coming back.
Look, don't be jealous. Look, for me, all Liverpool fans were part of it. It was beautiful being there. I wouldn't change any of it for the world. I'm still smiling about it. And as I said, met so many good mates who are thankfully now mates for life. So that's what it's all about.
We'll get stuck into it in a few minutes because I know there's a few things you want to talk about as well with regard to fan behaviour and how well it was, and I haven't forgotten. We'll definitely get onto that one. Let me move across to our local, I suppose, adopted scouser now. Cash, is that right to say? How long have you been in Liverpool now?
God, I've been in Liverpool for 8 years. So yeah, a long time. Harks to how old I actually am and how old I'm starting to feel. But it's felt amazing, particularly this week, to see the general kind of like mood in the city. And because obviously you live here, you see that it goes up and down and it's just on a constant up at the moment.
I know you aren't too far from Stanley Park, so it must be fun if you look right and you see Anfield and then you look left and you see the laughing stock.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at like Anfield, even like where our stadium is, it's on top of the hill. We can, it's on top of the sort of the park, and you can just sort of like look up and see it as like a beacon. Whereas like Goodison just kind of looks a bit like, I don't know, someone's just stuck it on the corner of like a dual carriageway and thought, right, that'll do here. But yeah, it's a specimen, isn't it? It's a beautiful place to play football.
And last but not least, Chris, my friend. I feel like you're the one that we haven't spoke to in the longest because I've had a bit of a catch up with Dave, a bit of a catch up with Cash. But how have you been, buddy?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Busy. Very busy. And I'm a happy chappy at the moment. I'm European champion.
Many times? I can't remember.
Well.
I can't remember,
Six
Chris.
Time.
Six?
Sixth time European champion as it happens. Yeah.
Is it six? Yeah.
A few days ago.
It's not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. Look, I thought we'd start with a quick recap, ladies and gentlemen, of our league position and the points. So, Dave, let me come to you first. If I offered you 97 points, buddy, at the start of last season, would you have taken it?
Absolutely, of course you would. You'd been in the loony bin if you said no. To get 24, there's a 24 extra points we got from last season to drop only 17 points out of a possible 114. Be madness to say no. Because it's just a freak that we have. And you have to tip your hat to an unbelievable football team that beat us by 1 point. So yeah, no, I'd have taken it every day, mate.
Cash, we're Dave saying an unbelievable team there, obviously addressing Manchester City. We're talking about a team there that averaged 99 points over the course of 2 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say? I think it's only circumstantial that we didn't win the league this year. You can't look at it in any other way. Sort of all but one of the Premier League seasons, I think, prior to this, our points total would have been enough to win the league. And I am loath to give City credit, but you can't argue with that average. And all you can say is that it's just a bit of a freak of nature, really, that we didn't win the league this year. But that City team, I don't think they're going to be as strong forever, and it's our job to push them next year again.
And Chris, for you, mate, it's on social media. It seems sometimes people are always looking for something to blame or a particular point in the season that we messed up on.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the league campaign?
I know what you're getting at there. People pointing towards the draws, West Ham and Leicester. I don't like to look at it that way, to be honest. I think there were enough games there where we were perhaps lucky to win as well. So, you need bits of luck throughout the season. All you can do is put as many points on the board as you possibly can. And I think I'll go back. It's nearly 12 months ago since I last did a podcast with you guys. And it was back then you asked my predictions for the season with regards to the league. And I think at the time I said Manchester City will win it, but we will close the gap. And I don't see anybody else challenging other than us. And that's what we got. So I can't be unhappy with a scenario where my predictions were pretty much true. Not that I've got any crystal ball or anything, or any great font of knowledge, but that's just how I saw it. So that's how it went, and I think we obviously ran them closer than I expected as well. I've said many a time in the past, Craig. I have. It's about being in the conversation come the final games of the season, whether that be in cup finals or right down to the last league game of the season. And that's where we were. It's where we need to be every season. You know, you're not guaranteed winning it every season, so you've got to be happy with that. And it's an extraordinary points total, and like Dave and Cash have said there, it's an extraordinary side we're up against. However heinously it's been put together. So fair play to Klopp's tricky Reds. They're fantastic. They've given us one hell of a ride, and that's what it's about. It's about that ride throughout the season, and it's been amazing. You know, we could have won the league on the last day of the season on 76 points like Leicester did. I'm sure they enjoyed the ride, but what I'm saying is, the way we've seen the support go up a level, the closeness between the players, and the fans, even the owners now. We seem to have a good relationship where there seems to have everything seems to have come closer together this season, and that only bodes well for next season. So I'm really happy with the way the league season went. It's just a shame we missed out, but we go again.
I should point out to the listeners, actually, Chris said something brilliant before we start recording. He referred to himself as the Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain of this podcast because he hasn't been around for 12 months. But there you go, mate. You come back in immediately, showing what it's all about, giving an immediate impact.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. I took my lead from the Ox there, haven't I? And again, another good thing about this season. I've seen this only once in my lifetime, and this is maybe it's because of social media or something. But this season, I've seen the impact players like Oxlade-Chamberlain, who haven't, no doubt, he'd have been in the first team a lot this season, but he hasn't been able to through injury. And even players like Marino and Mignolet, who were phased out of the first team, integral to the whole atmosphere and spirit around the team. I've very much enjoyed that as well. I think that's been a good thing. You don't often see that, do you? I know it's only £100,000 a week mascots, but it shows that they all matter at the club. That's fantastic to see.
Dave, one thing for me that was very prominent with our, not just our league campaign, but our season as a whole, was not giving up and scoring late goals. My God, we scored some important ones this season.
Yeah, it's just the belief in the team. I think it's just Klopp has that drilled into them now, and I think it was more present when we beat Barcelona 4-0. Is Klopp literally turns around and goes, "Look, I trust you. I believe in you. No matter what happens." The belief is there, and it's not just coming from Klopp. The belief is transcended through, let's say, the captain, through Milner, through Van Dijk, through Alisson, through all these senior pros who are also we have the likes of Andy Robertson, who's the captain of Scotland. We have Mo Salah, who's a leading figure in world football. We have Sadio Mane, I think he's captain of Senegal. All these lads know what it takes to win. We've seen that on June the 1st, but all these lads know what it takes to win. They don't give up. They constantly believe in each other. And it's a really good thing to say, to sit down here now with, being we're European champions, that we're actually building. This is not the pinnacle. We're actually building. And this team will go on and on and on and on. And that's where that belief comes from as well, that we are the dog's bollocks, and we are going to be the dog's bollocks for a hell of a long time.
Cash, we were fortunate enough to be able to watch the last game of the season together, albeit not inside Anfield, and we had something like 47 seconds of hope there at one point.
The period where Glenn Murray scores for Brighton and we're 1-0 up against Wolves, brief though it was an absolutely beautiful period. It was like it felt visceral. It was like you had this sort of swelling in your chest. You felt like shit, like everything that we've been seeking, everything we've been yearning for so many years could happen. It could happen today, and we're in the Champions League final. So it's very much a case of, it was a brief amount of hope, but it was a brilliant 47 seconds. I think what is so impressive is the fact that although that didn't come to pass, the boys still went on to win the Champions League and showed no kind of hangover from that disappointment, despite the fact that they had a ridiculously long 3 weeks to wait to play again. So yeah, as you say, we watched it together. It was a really lovely, brief moment of hope. It wasn't to be, but look what was to be, the Champions League, and I'm absolutely delighted with it, as I know everybody else is.
Cash, one thing, and you're the only one fortunate enough here to be living in the city, one thing I felt after we lost that league title on the last day of the season, well, we won our game, Manchester City won it, I should say, there was no sadness, really. There was no hangover. There was just pride. Pride is the word I kept coming back to. Pride in a team that drove that Manchester City team right to the last day of the season, that didn't give up against Barcelona, that never gave up for the entire season. That's all I felt around the city that day.
Well, exactly. I mean, how can you have anything other than pride for a team that has performed so well? How can you feel anything other than pride about a team that have gotten 97 points, have lost one game, who've got, the best player in the league in Virgil van Dijk, the Golden Gloves, the Samba Award, you've got the majority of the players in the Team of the Year. How can you have anything other than pride in a team that performs that admirably? I think our fans are known for being the best in the world, and I think the events of the last week or so have really demonstrated that tenfold. And because we are the best fans in the world, we recognise that you have to be proud of these boys for all the reasons that I've just stated, because at the end of the day, those are all fantastic achievements, and despite not winning the league, it doesn't taint the feeling of pride that I have. And that, as you said correctly, it was the overwhelming mood in the city, because people are reasonable and they understand just how much effort went in, and that is really appreciated.
Chris, I want to bring it on to the Champions League, and it was a really strange Champions League campaign, because in the group stages we lost every single away game. We couldn't get a point away from home, and then something clicked after Christmas, and we went into, I think, February time. I just want to get your thoughts on the earlier stages, mate, of the Champions League.
It was strange. It's hard to put your finger on what it was that went wrong in the games that we lost. I look at the PSG game and I take exception to that one as being something that we possibly did something wrong, and PSG turned up in that game. You don't often see them do it, but that's what PSG can do when they put some effort in, and don't think that they can just walk a game. They were scary good in that game. Unfortunately, they don't do that often enough, do they? For them, well, unfortunately for them. I just think we just met some sides that were up for it at a time where we were probably trying to manage our way through games. We know, I think we touched on this again last year about the previous season, where we perhaps went hell for leather at too many games and sort of ran out of steam going into the new year, as we come out of the busy Christmas period. And I think largely we were just trying to manage our way through a lot of games, which has stood us in good stead all season, right up to the final of the Champions League, right through the league season. And sometimes you just come up against a good side with a crowd behind them who on the day they just get it right. I don't think we particularly did anything wrong, but we won our home games, and in Europe, that's what you build a European challenge on. You build it on your home games, and long may that continue. That's why I've got hope that we could go and do it all again next year. That's why when we lost the final to Real Madrid last year, I went into this season thinking, we could easily go and do this again. Don't be downhearted about it. We're absolute beasts at home, and you can't rely on winning all three at home and just go and lose three away. You can't do that in the group stages, and I don't think that would be the norm for us. I don't think our away form is particularly that bad. We went to Munich, didn't we, and wiped the floor with them. So I just think it's just one of those things, isn't it? We handled it at home and got through the group stages, and look what happened. I think we could pull the bones off it till the cows come home, and I don't think we'll ever really find that we really did anything wrong. I just think that was a period of the season where we were just trying to manage our way through games without overexerting ourselves, and came up against teams that just really went for it.
Cash, there's a couple of things in those group stages that stood out for me. One, I love the fact that Red Star Belgrade can now say that they've beaten the European champions this season. Now, I know that they've won the European Cup themselves before, but this year they beat the European champions. And secondly, we talk about small margins in football. We can talk about how we possibly lost the league because of millimetres. Well, that Alisson save against Napoli right at the end was a massive turning point in a Champions League campaign.
You would say now in retrospect that was the turning point. I think particularly when you consider how Alisson actually performed in the final, making 8 saves. Okay, most of them were quite savable, but he was, well, in many people's opinion, our man of the match against Tottenham in the final. So when you consider his performance in that final and then what had gone before in terms of that save against Napoli, which essentially signals or is the catalyst for a progression in the competition, you do have to think that was the decisive moment. And I think I suppose there a lot of people say football evens itself out in terms of luck and misfortune and everything. So if you look at obviously the Mane 11mm miss against Man City in the league and how unfortunate that was, if you look at that against the not fortune but against the sort of against the fortune of the fact that Alisson was so instrumental in the Champions League campaign. So I suppose it does give me a little bit of comfort to know that the good things happen as well as the unlucky things. And in terms of Red Star, I think that game was really interesting because I haven't been angry at Liverpool many times this season, but in that game I found myself very angry at how we performed. I felt like it was one of our worst performances of the season. I think the atmosphere was so hostile, and it wasn't something that I expected players to succumb to, but they clearly did. But it's lucky that it didn't turn out to be detrimental to our overall campaign, and we went on to win the competition.
Absolutely. And Dave, I deliberately bypassed you for the group stages here, buddy, because I wanted to get your feeling on the last 16 tie, because you've been based over in Germany, obviously us coming up against Bayern Munich. What was the feeling when, I would say that draw was made, but what was the feeling around Germany when those games were coming up?
After the home game, when they drew 0-0, Bayern were really confident. Really, their fans were really confident. They were like, look, and even the non-Bayern fans, they were talking Bayern as just being a German national team, let's say. So it's going to be regimented, it's going to be disciplined, it's going to be like a machine. And I said, you're playing Liverpool at home, lads. Give it a break. And they were kind of surprised. They were like, yeah, but it's an English team. I said, okay, lads, look, you might be talking about the team that plays in the Premier League, but you're not talking about a quintessential English team. This Liverpool team, when it clicks into gear, can wipe any team in world football and hand them a new arsehole. And they were laughing. So I walked into the office the next day, and I just sat down and I said, you over there, make me a cup of coffee and do what you're told. Because there was that kind of thing where they were so German. So it was back to kind of fuck them. They were so German, and it was kind of like, lads, you have no idea what is going to happen to you no matter where we play you. Over two legs, Liverpool are just a different machine. They are effectively like a German national team now. Do you know Germany, how if they want to tear you a new arsehole, they will. If they want to manage the game and control the game, they absolutely will. And that's what Liverpool done. And that's what Jurgen Klopp has drilled into them, because obviously we have a German manager, and it's that mentality of football, is we want to control the game. We want to dominate. But what we also want to do, if we can't, is we want to bring that team down to our level and make them suffer. And that's what Bayern Munich found out the hard way.
Yeah, fuck them, as you said. It was some change, Chris, from not being able to get a win away in the group stage to go over to the Allianz Arena there and beat Bayern in their own backyard and make it look easy.
It was unbelievable performance. I think a little bit was born out of frustration from the result on the first leg, which you've got to hand it to Munich, and that they had a game plan and it worked in terms of getting the result. But it was sort of a false confidence it gave them. I think I don't think they were very good at all. I think they rode the luck quite a lot in that game. And then if that made them overconfident for the second leg, and we were supremely confident, it's a mismatch, and it always will be. Liverpool at home, when the confidence of another team isn't on point, or even away. Well, in this case, it was away. It's going to be a mismatch. We are different gravy now. We keep saying it. You can't take us lightly. And what I would like to do on this game as well, on this tie really, is just give a shout to, because I've not done podcasts with you all year, and this has been something that's really bugging me. I've not really got this out there. Is this constant bemoaning of these training camps that we go on, these warm weather training camps, and it's my understanding on these that we will do a training camp, let's say in January, with February onwards in mind, not for the next game. So like we will draw the next game, and then everyone's, don't go on these warm weather training camps. It's about the run-in. And that run-in starts immediately, but it's with a view to 10 games down the line, and the games in between. And we really clicked into gear. And it made us hard to live with. We were much fitter than every team that we came up against, much sharper. And that's something that you've got to hand it to Klopp and the training staff and the sports scientists and everybody at the club there. It's a collective. You know, we can talk about great goalkeeping performances. We can talk about Van Dijk being ice cold. We can talk about Origi with his, coming off the bench like Davy Fairclough style. But when all said and done, there's a lot of work that's gone in behind this, and that it's the players that bear fruit with it. But I don't think enough has been said about that. We were really well conditioned going into these games, and it just made us difficult to live with for teams like Bayern Munich.
Yeah, sometimes people can be a little bit disrespectful when they look at a warm at the training camp and they assume, okay, we lost last year, therefore we're going to do it again. And Jurgen Klopp has brought in, Chris, the best of the best with Corn Meyer and the other people he's brought into this football club. They know what they're at.
Of course. I don't know, bring him up. We lost Buvac and everyone's like, oh, we've lost the brain. That was another conversation we had this time last year. We lost Buvac and everybody's like, oh, we've lost the brains. What, Klopp's going to struggle here, blah, 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 blah. Klopp's a smart man. He really is. He knows his football. He knows these players. He's experienced the Premier League and the trials and tribulations of that. And he's worked out a way of combating the number of games versus the way we play. And we've seen a slight difference in the way we play, a slight difference in the way we approach each individual game and those throughout the season. And it's all down to getting the right people in the right places and making the right decisions. And, hats off to him and everybody at the club, not just the players.
Cash, I'm going to kind of gloss past Porto because time's against us, but the semi-final against Barcelona, a dream semi-final over two legs for anybody in the European Cup. We went to the new camp, lost 3-0, and I'm going to say this to them blue in the face, that was never a 3-0 game.
Oh, absolutely not. I think that was the thing that most fans felt, this burning sense of injustice, because Barcelona didn't deserve to win the game 3-0. We had a number of chances. We were profligate. Their keeper made a couple of good saves, Ter Stegen. Barcelona scored, not with every chance that they had, but they were very, very clinical on the night. But I think they knew. It was interesting because I watched it back and they knew, particularly Messi, that 3-0 wasn't going to be enough against this Liverpool team. I mean, when you see the chance that Dembele misses and skies, Messi is absolutely apoplectic. He is raging. And the reason being, he knew that 3-0 scoreline wasn't decisive enough against that Liverpool team. And it was interesting because we all felt no way was that a 3-0 game. But despite that, do we have enough to win by more than 3 goals at Anfield? And obviously, given what we've seen this team do, we should never really have doubted it in a way. But it felt totally improbable. But it was justice, really, when you consider, as you said, Craig, there was no way we deserved to lose that game 3-0. Everything went for Barcelona on the night. Everything conceivably went against us. But luckily, we didn't concede that 4th goal, and then the rest is history.
Dave, we get to Anfield. We know what we have to do. Jurgen Klopp has said he broke the game up into sections, I believe, and what he tried to instruct the players to do. We got the perfect start. Jordan Henderson breaks through, shot save, falls to Divock Origi, 1-0 at half time, mate. From there, it's just about keeping a clean sheet and seeing what happens in the second half. But I think it's fair to say that the memory of Rome the year before haunted Barcelona, and they just fell apart. Well, it maybe fell apart isn't fair to us.
No, it's probably not fair to us, mate. I think a lot has to do with it is Barcelona were, Barcelona play in a stadium that has double our capacity, let's say, as an example, and they were overwhelmed by the noise of Anfield. When Divock's goal went in, there were rabbits in the headlights from 8 minutes on. I give them credit for controlling the game the way they could control the game in the first half and not conceding more. Second half, it was like Liverpool playing a Sunday league team. And I mean that as respect for Barcelona. That's how much respect I can give them like that. They conceded, we scored 2 very, very, very good tactical counter-pressing goals. And then Divock to win it then, it was just, from a lad who's 20 years old, to have to have the balls, but to have the intelligence at the same time to do that, to win a semi-final against arguably one of the biggest teams in the world, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that from any other right back in the world. Believe you and me. And it wasn't even then. It was the finish from Origi as well. Was absolutely world class. I don't think he gets enough credit for that finish. But again, we're going back, and it's going to be, I think, a theme in this spot is the collective force at the club won Liverpool of that game, from the players on the pitch to the backroom staff to the manager to the crowd. Everyone had an involvement in that 4-0 game, and everyone played their part, and that's why we beat Barcelona.
And game management. I want to point to game management as well. It's something we cried about for years, that we're shit at the dark arts. We don't know how to see out a game. We're not in the referee's ear enough. But I tell you what, Jordan Henderson, James Milner, especially James Milner, actually, he was exceptional at the end of that game. Yeah,
the shithouse tactics once Divock Origi scored was absolutely sensational. And look, we football fans, we are hypocrites because we'd complain if it's our team. But we have been crying out for that shithouse tactics for a hell of a long time, and we have it now with an abundance. Fabinho as well, Andy Robbo, these lads, they were up to tricks that was just, and I was kind of celebrating that more than the goals, because I was saying this team now is ready to kick on. This is what we've been waiting for. But it was absolutely fantastic. Yeah,
Robbo on Messi was something I'll never forget. Just basically slapping him on the back of the head to say, get up out of that, like it's done, mate. Don't worry about it. You're not getting anything here. This is our gaff. It was the new Liverpool, Dave.
Yeah, and that was the first half as well, if I am correct, sorry. And that wound Messi up. That completely wound him up, because he was always going to be the focal point for Barcelona anyway. And I think the plan was, look, I'm no expert, but if I'd imagine the plan was, look, if you stop Messi, if you wind him up, if you interrupt his game, then you interrupt Barcelona. And they did, because we kept a clean sheet. Messi didn't have any real clear-cut chances. He might have had one or two, but Alisson was pretty comfortable as well. And it shows you the balls that Andy Robbo has. That lad was just how far he's come. You know what I mean? In the space of I don't know how many years, but rejected from Celtic, Dundee, Hull, and now Queen of the South, Dundee, Hull, and now a Champions League winner. Unbelievable.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Chris, I want to move on to the final, mate, and the warm weather training camp played a part here. The final itself was not a great spectacle, but how much of that do you put down to that 3-week gap that both clubs had with no competitive football?
I think some of it was that. I don't think it was all that. It doesn't help. Rhythm's a big thing you hear Klopp talk about rhythm a lot, don't you? I don't know so much about Pochettino, but you look at the way Spurs play. You'd think that they could do with the rhythm of playing regularly as well to keep on top of their game. So I think it had something to do with it. I also think we were two teams approaching this game from different angles that created a different type of nerves. We approached the game from an angle where we lost the previous year in the final, so we had better not lose, and we're also playing another English side, so we better not lose. It's a different place that this team has been in to where they've been before, so it's understandable that those nerves would have some kind of an impact on the way they perform. Spurs, I think Spurs were nervous simply because they knew they were underdogs. We do have somewhat of an Indian sign over them. It's a big stage that they've not been on before. If you think about the way that they qualified for the final, they've done it really without winning games or being in the lead. They've operated better as underdogs, which was, I think, where we were coming from last year. So I think there's a few reasons. I don't think Spurs' team selection was particularly clever. They shouldn't have played Kane. And I think we do have a few players who were perhaps a little leggy after a long season as well. So it's just a multitude of things. But when all said and done, it's Liverpool and Spurs in that final, and I couldn't give a dog shit whether the average fan around the world, whether a Man United fan or an Arsenal fan or even a Juventus fan, found that game entertaining. I was entertained. I thought it was superb. You know, it's European Cup final that my team's in, and we went and won it. So that's all that mattered to me. We got the result. You know,
That was it. It was about getting over the line this time.
It was, and you know, we won it in 2005, being absolutely rubbish, being outclassed completely. We had 6 good minutes and then some heroic defending. You know, and everybody goes on about, you know, the greatest story ever told. It was, but you've got to look at these games as games you don't want to lose, not games you just want to perform. What would you want to do? Have a really exciting game in which we played free-flowing football and, you know, getting us all off a seat for 90 minutes, but we lost in the end? No, not at all. Not at that. That's what you have throughout a season as part of the journey. In the final, it's about winning it. It's about having the balls to put the ball in the net when the time comes, to make the big save when the time comes, to put that last ditch tackle in when the time comes. You know, we saw Son go through on goal, and Van Dijk turns on the afterburners and is ice cool yet again. Cash pointed out that, you know, we saw some big saves from Alisson, albeit it pretty much when they were 2-0 down already and they were all savable efforts. You know, we had a goalkeeper that did his job, which we didn't have last year. You know, these are the things we need to look at, not whether it was a sparkling performance. And, you know, we got it over the line. And I don't think the 750,000 plus people in Liverpool, you know, for the trophy parade were asked one bit whether it was a sparkling final. You know, we won. We're 6 times European champions. That's about as good as it gets.
Yeah, we are. And I wanted to move on to Cash and talk about the ownership and transfers. But before I do, Dave, I did promise I'd come back to you, mate. I know you had something you wanted to talk about with regards to fan behaviour.
Yeah, it was, you know, huge shout out to Spurs fans. Any Spurs fan I met, we had a drink with, there were Spurs fans in our fan zone who were welcomed. And it was just a football festival. I'll be straight up and honest and probably a bit of ignorance. I had my doubts going into it. I was surprised 2 fan zones were so close together initially. But I've met Spurs fans who I'm keeping in contact now. They were an absolute credit to their football team. And both football teams, both football clubs, not just about Spurs, Liverpool fans were absolutely impeccable. Absolutely impeccable. The way we do Europe as well. Police were dancing with us. Restaurants were opening us with open arms. We were taking over places for the best reasons possible. I haven't laughed and, you know, smiled so much in such a long time. It was just constant smiling, singing, no trouble, absolutely no malice from anyone, and it was a credit. Liverpool and Tottenham Hotspur fans were a credit to the Premier League and European football, because that, I hope it does happen again with different clubs. It'd be great to see, but we set the marker now for other clubs to follow that suit.
Absolutely, it was wonderful to watch the videos coming back. I suppose we got to give a special mention here to Boss Night as well for a great show that themselves and Jamie Webster, and of course the Anfield Rap and everybody else that was part of that fan zone. But Jamie Webster, Dave, I know you missed his set because you wanted to get to a bar, but that gentleman at this moment in time, and Chris touched on it before we start recording, there is a difference in our fan culture, and the musical scene and the stuff that Boss Nights have done and the Anfield Rap do with their live shows and stuff, it all does culminate into why we are a different breed of fan.
It certainly does. You know, and give shout out to you. You done an interview with Jamie there at the Boss Night in Liverpool, and he just seems like a salt of the earth, down to earth guy that you could walk into a pub with, have a bevy with, have the crack, and leave it at that. You know, there doesn't seem to be any airs or graces with him. And if I was going to sum it up, isn't that what Liverpool Football's club's about?
Yeah, he's a fan living the dream, and it comes across when you speak to him and you see him. And I stood back and I watched as he interacted with other people. He had time for everybody, and he's definitely somebody that understands. I would say he's fortunate, but he isn't, because he's earned it and he's worked there and he's been at this now since 2013. But he knows, he appreciates it, and there's nobody else I would swap him for to be in that position. He is a fan. He's from the terraces. He deserves to be there, and even the guys that run Boss Night, they're all normal people. There's no airs or graces about them. They're just lovely fans, and yeah, it's just a beautiful culture, and it's why it all culminates into something beautiful and something special. And I'll never forget that night. I'll never forget being there in the M&S Bank Arena to see that show and that send off to the guys to Madrid, see Phil Thompson and see Alan Kennedy and John Aldridge, and it was just wonderful, and everybody was on the same page. And Cash, it kind of brings me on to a little word on the owners, because they had some flack when they first came in. We talk about transfer budgets, and we'll move on. I suppose this will link us into this transfer window as well, but they are no fools. They are, I don't like to say the word sports franchise, but they are owners of sports franchise. They understand. They understand from the Boston Red Sox what a particular group of fans who crave success are like. They understand the history of Fenway Park and Anfield, and they seem to be going from strength to strength.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't think it's a coincidence that they sought to buy Liverpool when it became clear that Liverpool could be bought. If you look at their portfolio, you can see that they obviously are attracted to sports franchises, but sports franchises for particular types of teams, you know, for a particular type of fan base. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they went for Liverpool when it became an option. If you consider some of the stick they've had since they came in, I think there was an understandable and very natural cynicism about ownership in general, obviously with the ordeal that went previously with Gillette and Hicks. And I think people were, to a degree, looking for wrongdoing. They were looking to see, are these guys legit? Are they going to do what's right for the club? Surely there's something amiss here. Surely they're going to do something wrong. But truth be told, I think they're one of the rare ownership groups that I believe can actually balance the commercial side with the genuine football progression side. The two things can go in tandem. So if you look at Man United as a converse example, Ed Woodward, obviously, he's much maligned for only understanding the commercial aspect of football and not football itself. And you see how that really melts a club from the inside. Obviously, we know what the situation is like with Man United at the moment. And I think with us, the owners just seem to get it. They don't seem too overly involved. They obviously very much trust the management. They trust the structures that are in place. They're involved, but not excessively so. They understand that to progress on the pitch, you need the right commercial interests and the right commercial partnerships, but you also need to maintain the soul and the heart of the club. They understand if you want to progress on the pitch, you don't want to leave the heart and soul of the club, i.e. Anfield, but you do want to expand it, and they did that. You know, there's an understanding at all levels that you want to better the team, but you want to do it in a way that's compliant with FFP, and you want to do it in a way that is gradual as opposed to just throwing money at it and hoping some sticks. So I think if you look at what they do understand, I think it's a great deal in terms of what's going to better the club. And I think they're quite a positive example of clearly being businessmen and clearly being financially motivated, but also, I hope, genuinely caring about the club. And, you know, that's starting to pay dividends now. That's starting to bear fruit, obviously, with this trophy win, and long may it continue.
Chris, and that was excellent, Cash, by the way. I very much enjoyed sitting back and listening to your thoughts on Fenway Sports Group, so thank you for that. Much more eloquent than I could ever have put it. Chris, moving on to this window, mate, it is important to say that we've heard mixed things about what Liverpool may or may not do in this window. One thing I think, mate, is beyond doubt is that there is money available to Jurgen Klopp. The club posted a profit of over 100 million. We've seen that we've received around £251 million from revenue from the television of the Premier League and the Champions League this season, along with our other commercial interests. I don't want this on social media not to turn into a conversation of around will the owners back Jurgen Klopp. For me, this all comes down to what Jurgen Klopp wants and nothing else.
That's exactly right. Maybe there are other influences as well, other than just Klopp. Everybody seems to trust each other, don't they? It's one thing having all of that money, but it's spending it wisely. We've seen Manchester United spend tons in the last couple of years, and then they've messed around with different managerial appointments, and now they've got a squad of overpriced players who come from 3 or 4 different management regimes, and it's a bit of a patchwork quilt. Sorry to come back to FSG on this one. They decided that they were doing things wrong may have been pointed out, but clearly not many people were happy with FSG. They clearly spotted where things were going wrong. We can't treat this like it's a baseball team, a baseball franchise. This is football. It's far more. There's far more chemistry involved from the top to the bottom in football than there is most sports, and they settled on getting the right man in. They got Klopp in, and they set about a plan of making sure that Klopp gets what he needs. But like Cash pointed out, within the confines of FFP regulations, and asked us to be patient and promised us success, and that's what's being delivered, and that's been done because they've invested correctly at the right times on the right people. You know, when people were questioning the prices spent on Alisson and Van Dijk, Klopp knew exactly what he wanted. He was prepared to wait for them, be patient, and the club were, you know, FSG, the club as a whole, were prepared to back him on that. And going into this summer, you know, we may not see another 70 or 60 million pound player come in. We may do if it's the right player. It all depends on what Klopp wants. That's the crux of it. Whether it's an £8 million left back from Hull or a £65 million goalkeeper from Roma, it's about what Klopp thinks this team needs to get 97 points again or more. And you know, we'll see what happens, and inevitably we'll all be left scratching our heads at the end of the summer. Why haven't we signed this player? Why hasn't this player come in? If we couldn't get him, why did we sign him? Because we're fans and that's what we do. But ultimately, I think Klopp will get what he wants, or near to what he wants, and it will be enough to take us forward into next season.
I suppose we can't go into specifics of players because we genuinely don't know. But Chris, if I asked you what positions you would like to see addressed realistically this summer, what positions would you be looking to strengthen? We're looking ahead to the fact that we want to be challenging domestically next year. We look ahead to the Club World Cup, Charity Shield, European Super Cup, lots of games coming up.
Well, yeah, we have got lots of games, haven't we? I think I read somewhere that we could end up playing somewhere in the region of 70 games next season. I think we've got one striking void in the side, and that's at fullback. We've got the two of the countries, if not Europe's best fullbacks at the moment in Trent and Robbo. But thereafter, we look quite slim. We've got players who can do jobs there, and I think that's where, if you're going to go into next season hoping to win a number of trophies, or any one of them trophies, and challenge for the title against this Man City side, might I add, you don't really want to be going into next season after being given this chance to basically spend money that you have got on a team that everybody wants to join, to go into next season just having players who can do jobs. So I think that's the one void we really need to fill. Whether it can be one player who can play both sides, or one either side. But you know, there's a big argument there as to whether you go out and sign somebody who's a direct challenger for the position, which I think will be difficult, or there's got to be players out there who are just quite willing to come in, bide the time, wait for their chance, and learn from the guys in front of them. One other area I'd like to see some attention paid to would be up top. I know everybody's a big Divock Origi fan at the moment, and I'm ever so sorry to say this, because I know people will disagree with me, but I'm not quite sure he's quite a good enough footballer. Excellent goal scorer. I'm not sure he's quite a good enough footballer for if he had to hold down maybe 15 games in a row. Should God forbid we have an injury to the front three, and obviously we don't really want to be putting that on young shoulders with Brewster. You know, he needs to be brought in and eased in this season and learn from the guys in front of him. So maybe that would be the other area. Other than that, I think we're really strong. I really do. I think we're really strong all over the park.
Dave, you're a man who loves a transfer rumour as much as I do, mate. I have a question for you, and it's not one I actually like asking, but do you think there's any chance of a shock departure from Liverpool this window?
No. Absolutely not, no. I'd ask your question with another question. Why the hell would anyone want to leave Liverpool Football Club now? I think Liverpool is such a financially strong position now as well. You know, there was talk about Van Dijk, let's say, getting a new contract, and rightly so. Give that man whatever he wants. If he wants the Isle of Wight, buy it from him. You know, just do, you know, whatever he wants.
I heard he's quite fond of Blackpool, Dave, personally.
buy him the Blackpool Tower, do it up, have a nice complex up there for the lad, and off with you. But no, I can't, to be honest, mate. No, I can't see any strange, strong players leaving. And that kind of brings me back to the very beginning of the pod. This is why Liverpool is building, and this is why it feels so good to win that trophy, is because I truly, truly believe that these guys are going places. Whether that's another European Cup next season, I don't know. It's not impossible. It's far from that. If it's going to be, you know, the first Premier League trophy, if it's going to be whatever it might be, I wouldn't bet against us. I do see players coming in, because I don't think Klopp will rest on his morals. I think he will say, okay, yeah, we've done well, but we need to kick on, lads. We need to, you know, maybe get 98 points, 99 points. But what we also need to do is we need to think about, and as you mentioned, you know, there's a World Club Championship coming up. Chris said we could possibly play 70 games. This is Klopp. Klopp builds. You know, you could see from his first season to his second season, to his, let's say his first full season to his second season, and then the season just gone, that it's always been progress. And I think there'd be progress again.
Cash, there's one conversation I want to have with you, because I've enjoyed having this with you before, and that's around the centre forward issue now. Some people are saying, go out and get us a Timo Werner, go out and get us an out-and-out striker. And then we have to take into account quite how important Roberto Firmino is to everything that our, let's say, front five do. I remember looking at the stats at halftime in the Champions League final, a game that we were unsure whether Roberto Firmino was going to be fit to play, and he covered the most ground of any Liverpool player in that first half. A probably not fully fit Bobby Firmino, putting everybody else to shame. It's easy to say he doesn't score enough goals, but that completely overlooks and doesn't give him credit for what he does do in that front three.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd give you one comparison, and it's that in the Champions League final, each team had a forward who wasn't 100% fit. Firmino for us, Kane for Spurs. Whereas with Kane is, I think, obsessed with scoring. He's obsessed with being, you know, he has the most shots, although he didn't in the Champions League final, but he's obsessed with scoring. He's quite a singular mind in that way. And I think Tottenham's front line didn't really knit together well as a result of that. I don't think our front three really knit together as well as they could have done in the final, because it was a bad, sort of not the best spectacle overall. But if you look at our centre forward, who also had fitness issues ahead of the final, he was still able to be instrumental in whatever foothold we managed to establish in the game, particularly in the first half. So I think that comparison is really, really important, because if you look at players who are talismanic for their team, Roberto Firmino is, but in a more understated way, but that's for the betterment of our team, whereas Harry Kane wants to be the overt talisman, but that doesn't always work, and it didn't in the final because he wasn't fit. So in terms of Firmino and his importance, another thing to highlight is because he is so important, the reason he's so important, I think, or one of them, is that he's super specific in the way he plays. He's not, you would say, okay, he's not an out-and-out number 9. He doesn't really fulfill that particular mould. He's not like necessarily a target man, but he can play almost anywhere across the front three in a way. He picks the ball up deeper. He tracks back defensively. He has a sort of whole range of skills and roles that make him specific and unique as a centre forward. One of them being, as you touched on, the fact that he's not selfish. So his importance is emphasised by the fact that you can't just go out and buy a carbon copy of him, at least not someone who's going to be content to sit on the bench, which is what they will be doing by and large, because obviously he is so good and so instrumental. So I think the centre forward issue, I agree with what Chris said before. I don't think Divock Origi is a good enough footballer. He's had a lot of wonderful moments, but I don't think he's a good enough footballer to really hold down that mantle and to offer anything similar to what Firmino does in the overall scheme of the game. So I do think we need to address that, but I am at a bit of a loss as to how we properly address that for the reasons that I've just outlined, in terms of Firmino's so important, he's so specific, he'll always play. His injury record, barring obviously the last bit of the season now, is largely pretty impeccable. So where do you find the player that's going to be content knowing all those things? And that is where the dilemma arises for the club. But as Dave said, albeit in terms of talking about players wanting to leave, if we approach a player, even if you explained that more limited role to them, what player wouldn't want to come play for us now? Look at what we've just done. Look at the way we've just done it. Look at the league campaign in tandem with the successful Champions League campaign. Any player within the right mind would want a slice of that. So it's just a case of finding the right player that's going to complement what we already have. But I agree with Chris that it's not Origi. I agree Brewster's not quite ready. So who do we go for? And that's where I kind of hit a bit of a wall.
So I think sometimes as well, I think as fans we get a little too obsessed with having a player who's the exact carbon copy of Firmino. He plays as a false 9, which we play instead of having a 10. So as fans, we're also obsessed with having a 10. Well, we're not going to play a 10 and Firmino. So we perhaps in other games when teams are sitting deep perhaps and we need that player who can play that slide rule pass and that player who can put the ball in the net. Maybe Origi's that guy, the guy who puts the ball in the net, and whoever plays instead of Firmino there, or we'll drop a midfielder and play a 10. Maybe that's the option. Who knows? So we maybe don't need a carbon copy for Firmino. And people say he doesn't score enough goals. He scored over 20 last season. I think he scored 16, 17 this season. Which, like I say, he plays as a false 9 instead of us playing a 10. If we had a 10, then Mane or Salah would probably be playing up top, and we'd be looking at their numbers as strikers, not Firmino's. So it's, I think his numbers are fine. He gets a fair number of assists as well, and you wonder, just being the foil for the other two guys, just how many goals we'd be able to chalk off them every season without him in the side. So I think it's rather than us going out and finding a carbon copy for Firmino, we are perhaps going to have to look at other options, which is a good thing, because if we can add variety as well, then I think that's perhaps where Man City trump us. They have more variety, don't they, in their options.
Yeah. If I can give my 2 cents there as well, what I think is, and you made the point just to reiterate on that, Chris, the amount of games we're going to potentially play this year. But if you look at our front three, Salah in the league, let's say, what did he play? 36, 37 games. Mane the same. Firmino 35. You can't keep on having consistency from players if you're asking them to play on top of European games, on top of domestic games. You can't expect that consistency. So what we need is someone who can come in, work the bollocks off the boys as well as in a starting place, but also someone who's comfortable to say, okay, do you know what? If I get into this, well, they're going to have to, let's say, not get into this team, but if I'm a world-class player, I know I'm still going to get 25 league games this season for Liverpool. I'm still going to get, hopefully, 6 Champions League games. I'm still going to play in the domestic cups, because we are going to maybe have to be looking at this slight rotation. But what we need is players who can complement each other, as in can drive each other. And we need a world-class centre-forward, or someone, let's say, in the front three. I'm not asking for players to replicate or a player to come in to replicate each other. What I'm asking for is actually someone can maybe bring us something a bit different and who can liven things up, because there was a point made about what managers said, that Liverpool are only good is when they have a bit of space. And sometimes we have been a bit found out when the space is really, really limited. So what I'd like to see is someone kind of come in who can work between different angles and channels and make that space and create that space when there is no space. And as I said, with the amount of games that the guys are playing, it has to be someone that can come in and you can say, okay, look, you're playing today, but we expect a goal, or we expect an assist, or we expect you to drop back. Who that's going to be as well is the $1 million question, because I don't think any 4 of us have a clue who we're going to sign.
There's a couple of points I wanted to make on what you've both all said there. And Cash, I'm going to come to you on this one. We do need a bigger squad. There is this thing around maybe sometimes players want the guarantee of game time, but also what Chris, yourself and Dave have all touched on is the amount of games that we're going to play. And we've seen with Manchester City, we've seen with other successful teams around Europe. Success gives players that little bit of a break and lets them, like, people are okay to play less games if you're part of a winning team and you're lifting trophies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when things are going well, there doesn't tend to be that much sort of revelation of unrest within the changing room, or players not being happy and X, Y, and Z. You only have to look at, for an example, like Daniel Sturridge this season. He's just one example that comes to mind of a player who didn't play very much, but you never really heard that he complained. So I think you are right. But with anything, and I think with a football club, and this is what Jurgen Klopp, for me, to my mind, is so good at. He's excellent at keeping that balance. He's excellent at keeping so many multimillionaire footballers who are at the top of their field in sport. He's good at keeping all those potential egos happy. And there's no doubt that any player that would come in the offensive position, as the guys have said, would get considerable game time, but would also have to be satisfied with perhaps not being the main man, in inverted commas. But I think if there's anyone to make a player happy within those confines, it is Jurgen Klopp. But as you said, Craig, it's much easier to sell that vision to a player when you say, and by the way, you'd be playing for the six-time European champions. Are you okay with that if you only play 25 games a season? I think it's a much better sales pitch. It's a much better way of attracting players. So you're right. I think more so than in previous years, we've held more of a tangible kind of calling card, because players quite often in their interviews when they join the club say, this club is a club with huge history, X, Y, and Z. They do the sort of the spiel that you hear a lot of the time. But actually now what we can say is, well, we're not just a club with really good historic success. We are a club with current success. So come play for us, even if it does have a slight limitation in terms of your playing time. So yeah, I think being part of a winning team makes anything a lot easier to accept.
I would, I suppose, add to that as well that Klopp will want to be bringing in players that probably will say to themselves, yeah, I might only play 25, 30 games, but I'm backing myself as well. I'm backing myself that I can compete with Sadio Mane, with Mohamed Salah, with Roberto Firmino. And when I get my chance, I'll take it. And I suppose, Chris, that will lead us into looking ahead to next season, mate. And I've kind of got a double-ended question for you. One, how on earth do we wrestle this title away from that Manchester City team? And secondly, how much of a hindrance do you believe the World Club Championship will be? I love saying the fact that we could be World Club champions, by the way.
I know a lot of people seem to have a bit of an issue with this World Club Championships, but it's one we've never won. And it clearly holds a lot of stock with a lot of sides in Europe. So foreign players are interested in it, and we've got a lot of foreign stars. So I expect that we'll go great guns for trying to win that, to be honest. And that's fine. If that's the players have earned the right. They've won the European Cup. They've earned the right to go for that. So I don't think any arses who think it's going to disrupt the season, they can pretty much just put up with it, because the players are going to want to win it, aren't they? And they've earned the right. So I think there's meticulous planning that goes on for every season, and we'll plan for the eventuality of it's only 2 games, isn't it? We go in at the semi-final stage because
straight into the semis. Yeah, we'll be playing
2 games. Yeah, I know it's going to be in Qatar though, isn't it? It's pretty hot over there, but it is in sort of their winter if they really have one. But I'm up for it, to be honest. I like it. It's not something I've seen us in for a number of years now, and 14 years, and it's something we've not won. So I'd like to see us win it, whether it's classed as a major trophy or not. But in terms of wrestling the title for Man City, I think I quite like the language Klopp used all throughout the season. He kept reiterating a number of points. I think it was 105. I know we're probably not going to hit 105, but he kept talking about these points. He didn't talk about catching Man City. He never very rarely mentioned Man City. He talked about a number of points that we needed to aim for. And I think as long as they keep that mindset, we'll be in with a chance of winning it. And I think at the moment, Man City have an issue that not many people seem to be talking about. I mean, maybe they are, and I'm not listening. I don't know, but they've gone and lost their. I would say he's their captain. So I don't know whether he's their Jordan Henderson or their Virgil van Dijk, but he's basically they've lost the backbone of their side there. If you ask me, And we all watched England last night, I'm pretty sure we did, and we've seen what John Stones is like. John Stones next to Kompany looks brilliant. Mangala next to Kompany looks brilliant. Similarly, in a similar way to, we get good performances out of Lovren and Matip. And I'm not saying it's because the bad players and they only play well because Van Dijk's there. What I'm saying is that is an influence Van Dijk has on those players, and in the same way Kompany had on the players around him. That is a massive loss to them, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
That is worth points. It really is. They cannot play 200 million. That's what he's worth to them. They cannot play 200 million pounds. They can't. 200 million pounds doesn't have arms, legs, and a head. I don't know how they replace that. I really don't.
I'd just come in there and actually just extend that point. I think I was speaking to a Man City fan yesterday, actually, and I was discussing this point and what, apart from obviously the FFP, which is ongoing, and then Vincent Kompany's departure, which I think you're totally right, Chris, is so significant, and arguably because they've just got bottomless amounts of money, it's not been made as big a deal of in terms of what he will do and what gap he will leave in their team. But if you actually look at City more broadly, they actually need something of a rebuild, in my opinion. If you look, they need a central defender, absolutely. Their left-back position's unresolved because Benjamin Mendy's always injured. Zinchenko has been good there, but isn't a natural left-back. Neither is Fabian Delph. You look at their midfield, okay, yes. They've got Kevin De Bruyne, who has had an injury-plagued season but should be fine for next season and who's a wonderful player. But then you've got Gundogan into the last year of his contract. Nothing new there in terms of signing a new one. You've got David Silva, who this will be his last season at City. I believe he wants to go back to Spain, to his old club. Then you've got Bernardo Silva, phenomenal player. Raheem Sterling, again, brilliant player. But then you've got Leroy Sané, who there is a little bit of speculation over, so you don't know exactly what's going to happen with him. Riyad Mahrez hasn't really hit the ground running, absolutely, and I'd argue that hasn't added really that much to them in terms of their team. And then obviously Sergio Aguero will go back to Independiente at some stage, whether it be at the end of next season or not, I'm not sure. So if you actually look at that City team, an element of rebuilding needs to start now, because you've got Kompany has left, you've got David Silva, Aguero, potentially Gundogan, and Fernandinho, who I forgot to mention, all who will probably leave at the end of next season. So when you look at how to wrestle the title from City, it's going to be difficult. Absolutely, Pep Guardiola is a brilliant manager, but I would argue that in terms of rebuild, they're in a much worse condition than we are, and arguably we go into next season with a more established squad because they're going to have to add more to theirs than we do.
Essentially, we're at different ends of the curve.
Yeah.
They're still at, we're kind of both at the top of the curve, but we're at different ends. We're approaching the top. They're going to be coming down from the top over the next couple of seasons. I don't think it's going to, when you talk about players like Silva, I think they've got Foden coming in, but he's not going to be David Silva every week, is he? And then, I know what you're saying about Aguero. Aguero's still probably going to score 20-plus league goals next season, I think. But maybe, like you say, going into the season after. But if we're looking at just next season, I think the only real glaringly obvious problem they've got is replacing Kompany. That's the only. But I think it's that big. That's the one thing. I think it's massive to them.
Sorry, Dave, I'm going to come to you on this, but we need to finish up on this because we're out of time. But I do want to come to you, Dave, and I want to give you a chance to give your point on that. But I also want to finish up by asking you, what are you expecting from this season? Are you expecting another major push in the Premier League, or are you expecting us to just keep trying to put more trophies in that cabinet, mate, and go and hell all out for everything?
I think we will push in the league. I think it's been, as I said, it's been a building process for Klopp over the last 3 years, and I think priority next season, as it was this season, will be the Premier League. I mentioned there, and look, I could get laughed at, and I could be told what an idiot, but I don't think Liverpool, it's impossible for them to go out and win 2+ trophies. I really don't. And what I mean by that is, and it'll caveat what I'm just going to come on, and what I say is, for Liverpool to wrestle the trophy for the Premier League of City, they don't need to concentrate on City. They need to concentrate on themselves.
Agreed.
And I completely agree with you guys are saying, City have lost an absolute talisman in the dressing room in Vincent Kompany. They're losing players who are getting a bit older. I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face. This team has just begun, and I'm so convicted in saying that Liverpool Football Club concentrating themselves, the world is their oyster.
I think that's a very good way of finishing up, and I want to kind of leave this an open-ended conversation because I want to have an excuse to drag you guys back on in a few weeks' time when things become a little bit clearer and we head towards the Charity Shield, the European Super Cup and stuff like that. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure as always to catch up with Dave, with Chris and with Cash. And no doubt I'll get them back on very soon because the channel from day one when we moved to YouTube just hasn't felt the same without having this podcast and having the option to talk to who are at this point just really damn good mates of mine. So look, thank you guys so much for everything. I know the channel's taken off this year on YouTube. It's been amazing, but just knowing that you guys are still here and knowing that we still have this link, it means the world to me, and I know it does to Connor as well. So I just want to take a second to say thank you guys for having your patience, for your support, everything.
Pleasure.
No, pleasure. I like being a part of it, so thank you very much.
What they said.
Perfect. And look, ladies and gentlemen, as always, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. It'll be the first of many over the course of the summer. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, and most importantly, let us know in the comment section below if you're watching this on YouTube what you think, if you disagree with what the guys or I have said, because this is the community and we love your support and we love to know what you guys think. We'll catch up with you all really soon. Up the motherfucking Reds.